Beijing and Manila clashing in the South China Sea after a Chinese Coast Guard ship reportedly expelled Philippine vessels from the contested Scarborough Shoal. Manila, however, reporting a collision between the Chinese Coast Guard and a Chinese Navy vessel, with the former pursuing a Philippine patrol boat. A Philippine official remarking on dangerous blocking maneuvers by the Chinese Coast Guard while the Philippine vessel conducted its escort mission for boats delivering aid to fishermen in the Scarborough Shoal. The Chinese Coast Guard ship reportedly sustaining substantial damage. China's Coast Guard making no mention of this collision, but confirming there had been confrontation, although maintaining it was lawful and necessary. The incident coming amid worsening ties between the two countries following China's diplomatic protest against remarks made last week by the Philippine president on Manila being drawn into any conflict between China and Taiwan. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. later clarifying that involvement would solely be due to the Philippines being geographically close to Taiwan. And for more, we're joined by CNA's Buena Bernal live from Manila. Buena, President Marcos there clarifying his previous comments, those comments made last week while he was in India on Taiwan.
That's right. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. emphasizing the country's commitment to the peaceful settlement of disputes when he said that no Filipino would want war over the cross-strait tensions. But given the proximity of the Philippines to Taiwan, Taiwan is adjacent in its north, that the Philippines should be prepared to protect its territory, prepared to protect its people, and there are over 100,000 Filipinos in Taiwan should war break out. He did say that China may be misinterpreting his words for propaganda, but do note that China, when there is opportunity, also emphasizes the consistency of its stance in relation to Taiwan. Recall that in January 2024, when President Marcos congratulated then President-elect, now Taiwanese President William Tai, China also reacted negatively, and Mr. Marcos explaining that that's just common courtesy, but China did not see it that way. China also reacting negatively last April when the Philippines partially lifted a travel restriction on Philippine officials going to Taiwan for trade and investment purposes. So the president is saying essentially that contingency measures should be in place in case war breaks out over Taiwan. And the fact of the matter is that the venue for some of the annual flagship military drills between the U.S. and the Philippines, called Balikatan, are located in the country's extreme north, close to Taiwan, is essentially part of the preparation for such evacuation plans. So the president said Monday the hope is for conflict not to ensue, but he said, unfortunately, mere hope is not a plan.
All right, Buena, China would want to make it clear that its position is consistent, but the Philippine president's position as well. His domestic audience will be watching to see that he is consistent. Comments last week, clarification today. How could these comments worsen existing ties in the public side between the Philippines and China?
Publicly, the Philippines Department of Foreign Affairs has been cautious, saying it continues to adhere with its one China policy, continues to adopt a policy of non-interference on China's internal affairs. But perhaps as further evidence of that, the Philippines maintaining that one China policy, I do know from multiple sources in government that some high-ranking Philippine officials who made a visit to Taiwan in July for a maritime security conference received a confidential letter, an official communication from the Philippine Foreign Affairs Department with a negative undertone. And I asked the Foreign Affairs Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro about this shortly after the letters were transmitted, and she said, clearly understanding what I was pertaining to even without naming names publicly, she said, quote, government officials should be able to toe the line that comes from the president. As I said, he's the architect of foreign policy. So Wei Su, there would have been no interest for the Philippine Foreign Affairs Department to tell high-ranking officials who visited Taiwan to, quote, toe the line if the Philippines did not care about the One China policy. The fact of the matter is that China and the Philippines maintains diplomatic relations for 50 years now, and that China does not maintain such relations with any state that recognizes Taiwan as an independent country.
Oh, thanks for that. CNA's Buena Bernal there reporting live from Manila on the state of ties between China and the Philippines.